Moral criticism. Moral criticism evaluates a work on the basis of the moral elements it contains and their correspondence to ethical principles that the critic feels should govern human life. The founder of moral criticism was Plato, and he lived in 427 through 347 BCE. He says, "If art did not teach a moral lesson, it was harmful to its audience." Moral criticism has been in use from Plato's time up through the present. You can think in a moral perspective when a character or the author is making a decision, when someone is experiencing emotions after, before, or during an event, when reading about a society or community in literature, when reading about a social or economical code of any sort in literature, or when reading about war, turmoil, or conflict in literature. Some questions to ask when using the moral perspective is this moral/unethical? Does this follow my moral code? Does this follow the author's moral code? Does this follow the character's moral code? Is this acceptable to their society/the real world? Why is this happening? Where does the author's morals come from? Where do the character's morals come from? Examples of literature that you can use moral criticism to judge is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Night by Elie Wiesel, or The Telltale Heart, which is a long poem by Edgar Allan Poe. Types of literature commonly used with moral criticism are historical fiction, fables and fairy tales, nonfiction, science fiction, and literature on dystopian societies. Literary devices commonly associated with moral criticism are analogies and metaphors because these things can help the author relate what is going on in the story to other moral dilemmas. So when using moral criticism, you can analyze the author, the characters, the reader, or the audience in terms of their morals and how they're acting upon them. The poem I chose for this criticism is Good and Evil by Mark Spencer. The nature of good and evil is more than black and white. They are the darkness in our souls, likewise they are the light. They dwell at human nature's core and breed virtue and sin. They are the fundamental force within the hearts of men. They fuel our greed and selfishness, our pride and vanity. They fan the flames of bigotry, inciting enmity. They also teach us how to love and live righteous lives. The struggle between right and wrong determines who survives. The sum of every human heart is measured by the scale. It will bring life to those who learn and death to those who fail. Without them there would be no light or darkness in our souls, no thought of who or what we are, no wide-eyed dreams or goals. Good and evil from our center, like the roots of a tree. They're human nature's architect. They are humanity. So the main points and analysis of this poem is that good and evil make us human and allow us to judge our actions. Also, the struggle between right and wrong is a test of character and survival. People's hearts are evaluated by their morals and how they act with or without them.
Formalism. Formalism attempts to treat each work as its own distinct piece, free from its environment, era, and even author. The primary function is the objective and scientific analysis of literary style. The time period was the late 1920s to early 1930s. It was first created in Russia. A person that is important to know is Victor Skolavsky. He was a well-known formalist critic. Some examples of poems that are good to look at with formalism are poems written by Edgar Allan Poe, Henry James, and T.S. Eliot. Some typical questions are, how does the work use imagery to develop its own symbols? How are various parts of the work interconnected? How do paradox, irony, ambiguity, and tension work in the text? Some literary devices that can be analyzed are imagery, paradox, irony, ambiguity, and tension. Other ones that are very important are rhyme and rhythm. Formalism addresses the text itself. It is meant to take away any bias and just focus on what the words are trying to depict. Formalists assume that the keys to understanding a text are within itself. The difference between formalism and moral criticism is it disagrees with what makes a work good or bad. The poem that I picked to analyze is El Dorado by Edgar Allan Poe.
New criticism. It originated in the United States, and it was at its height of popularity between 1940 and 1950. This form of literary analysis focuses on the belief that any information necessary to understand a work of literature is right there on the page. It emphasizes close reading so that the reader can understand literary devices such as imagery and symbols, both of which focus on word choice, and paradox and irony, both of which focus on understanding of the plot. New criticism seeks to avoid intentional fallacy, where the work is judged based on the author's intent rather than the value of the work itself, as well as affective fallacy, where the work is judged based on its emotional effect on the reader rather than the actual value of it. New criticism analysts will be asking how the work works rather than how the author meant for it to be read or how the reader has reacted. New criticism is a branch off of formalism, so there are a lot of similarities, but one major difference is the consideration of theme in new criticism. Formalism looks more at the words individually, but new criticism will look at the work more holistically. The poem I chose was The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. The first symbol to focus on is the dual meaning of the first line, so much depends upon, because it's not just talking about the red wheelbarrow, but also about how in such a short poem each word matters. The next literary device is the enjambment of wheelbarrow, rainwater, and white chickens, where the word is continued onto the next line. This forces the reader to focus on the composition of these words. The next observation to make is that if this were a sentence, so much would be the subject and the red wheelbarrow would be the direct object, where in the poem the red wheelbarrow is the subject. The last and most obvious literary device is the imagery created by the last three couplets. We're excited.